Hello and welcome to Mistakes Were Made. This was a channel created to document our progress in becoming debt free. That's from credit card debt, personal loans, car payments, and of course the mortgage. We are focusing on the credit card and personal loans at the moment. The mortgage is going to be in the future once we get through the mess that we've made with those others. If this is the first video of ours that you've seen, welcome. We really appreciate you checking us out. And if you want to see where we kind of got started, I recommend looking at our debt confession video, which is the first video that we did. And if you are a returning viewer, thank you. And if you have subscribed, thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of you spending your free time to check in on us, see how things are going. I know your time is precious, so we very much appreciate that. We are going to be doing our first half of December recap. As you may know, we do our budgeting based on paycheck. I get a paycheck twice a month. My partner is more traditional with the every 2 weeks, which tends to match up into a twice a month as well. So we figured that a budget based on the actual amounts coming in broken out by that paycheck would be much easier for us to organize, to follow, and be a little bit more detailed rather than trying to do it on a monthly basis or even necessarily a weekly basis. So, excuse me. That's what we're doing here. We're looking at the calendar. I write down all of the inflows and outflows of our money because I want to be able to see it, make it tangible. I do check our checking account constantly. If you watch my other videos, you know that I look at my spreadsheet constantly. I am essentially in active vigilance with our budget, much more so than we were before we started this process. And of course, I'm trying to move on past this because it is the past, can't change it, and we need to be looking to the future. But I do still kick myself that it took the reality of a job loss that is still pending to kind of get our heads right and get us focused where we really needed to be focused. But we are there now. We are working towards, appropriate goals and doing what we can. That said, this month we had a little bit more movement because we had some things going on that were not planned for, and unfortunately were not fully covered by the sinking funds and cash envelopes and things mechanisms we had put in place to try and help mitigate when stuff like that happens. So the first item I did want to touch on is our Bank of America card. So I had made last month that larger payment with the expectation that it was going to wipe out one of the $0 promos on that card. And when the statement cycled, in the area where it kind of tells you what your promo status and stuff is, there was still notations for that particular one. So I was really concerned that the payment that I made didn't get allocated properly or didn't get applied in the way I was expecting. And so I had tried to use their automated little chat bot and it was useless. Suffice to say, I did call them, spoke with a lovely lady named Annie. She was great, very helpful, and she did confirm that yes, the 0% promo that was set to expire in February was no longer showing on the account. It had been fulfilled. So that was a relief. So that was a win. That was the first yay. Then we actually ended up having some issues with one of our dogs, and the cost to deal with that issue, which is still ongoing, was far more than we had actually saved in our pet sinking fund. So unfortunately, that fund has been wiped out and we had to pull from our unallocated bucket to weather those additional costs. We are very fortunate that the situation we are in right now means we do have unallocated funds. So we were able to absorb that. In the future, when my job is gone, that level of flexibility, that ability is going to be gone too. So that's another reason why when I think back, I'm like, oh, if we've only had gotten started on this sooner, we would have had more money built up in that fund and would have been able to absorb these unexpected costs. But that's not where we were in the journey. That's not where we are in the journey. And so we got to move forward. The other piece was I was expecting to see our Prime membership come out of our checking account on the 1st. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen on the 2nd. It didn't happen on the 3rd or the 4th. So I typically go and look at the credit cards, even though we're not utilizing them, at least on a weekly basis, more like a couple of times a week. So I was due to look at it anyway. And my thought was, well, maybe when I thought I had fixed it so that charges made on Amazon don't go to the Amazon account, maybe it didn't work the way that I was thinking, and for some reason the Prime membership charged there. So I went and I looked, and lo and behold, there was a charge on that account. However, it was not the $139 I was expecting for Prime. So then I had a mystery of what the heck is this, because there should be nothing getting applied to that credit card. Took a look, and it turns out, even though I had done a search to see if there were any items that hadn't shipped yet that were, pending out there a couple of months ago, something did actually apply to that credit card, and it was something we had on a subscribe and save, or filters for a refrigerator. Wasn't expecting that, because I had thought when we made the change that it was kind of across the board, cascade effect across the board on everything. Turns out if you do have subscribe and save, each of those subscriptions are individual, and you have to go in and change that setup each time, for each one, so that the payment method is updated to what you're expecting. I didn't realize that was the case, and quite frankly, I'd forgotten that we had that subscription, because it is on a 6-month basis. And that's one of the reasons why when I did my previous look for things that hadn't shipped yet, it wasn't there, because the subscribe and save, it doesn't actually order it until a few days before your subscription comes up. So it hadn't been ordered yet, and so thus it didn't show in the ordered but not yet shipped. Makes sense when you think about it now, but I was a little annoyed, and both at myself and just the situation. So we did make a payment to the credit card. It's actually over here, for that specific amount. And then in this case, we did have enough money in our household fund to be able to take that cash and deposit it into the checking account to cover that. Now, because we did pull some of that out, we didn't have very much left in that. So I think it was about $25. We just went ahead and took that $25 and deposited back into the account to kind of help buffer some of that pet cost overage. It was a drop in the bucket, but it was a little bit of something. So we had that. I also had to purchase more mailing bags for Etsy, because I had gotten low. The other thing that we had that wasn't really an expected cost was we have a big jug of coins that we have been saving for numerous years, not just this year, multiple years. And we wanted to go ahead and cash those in at the end of the year, and so we can start the process fresh for 2024. So I did need to get some coin wrapping supplies. So there was another cost. That said, we did have some things that came through that kind of acted as an offset. In one case, my Etsy shop, we had a little bit more sales than we typically do. Not I mean, it's less than $100, so not huge, but that little bit helped. And I actually won my dispute with a company that does sales on Facebook. Uh, it's one of those overseas companies, and they tried very, very, very hard to not give me my money back, even though what they sent me was not what I ordered. But I was smart enough to pay for it with PayPal, and I did not let them jerk me around long enough for that PayPal dispute time period to run out. So I ended up having to escalate through PayPal. They were trying to do something where they would give me, I think it was like $14, and you could keep the item and sell it to get, the rest of your money back. And I'm like, why should I have to make the effort to sell something that you sent to me incorrectly in order to get the money back on a product that I paid in good faith and expected you to fulfill properly? That was just asinine. Additionally, the other thing was, I was like, I will be happy to send this back to you. Just send me a prepaid mailing label and, no problem. Well, the product is actually made in China, not surprising. And their issue with that was, well, it's super expensive to ship to China. And I'm like, I can sympathize with that. But again, none of this situation is my fault except for the fact that I did not do research before I ordered, because if I had, I would have seen on the internet that there are a lot of complaints about you guys being a scam company. So, if you're on the up and up, if you sent something incorrectly to a person, you need to make it right. Either give them a refund, send them a mailing label if you want the item back. I should not have to pay additional money to get you this item that you sent me wrong and incorrectly. So it was a whole thing. In the end, PayPal sided with me and gave me the refund I had asked for, so that was a second win. Okay, so let's take a look, now that I've complained about online shopping, at the credit cards. So Amazon, Citi, and US Bank are the three credit cards that we pay during our first half of the month. So each of those had a reduction. This one is going to increase because though the payment due date is in the first half, it doesn't actually cycle until the second half. So interest will be added onto this one. This one has a 0% promo, so it's good as it is. And then this one also has interest, so we actually made the payment on the second week, so it got down to $84.51, but with the additional interest that applied, it jumped back up to $86.35. It always makes me sick when I see, any progress that I've made get mostly or partially wiped out by that interest. So definitely something I am chomping at the bit to get a little bit more activity on, but we are in savings mode right now, so that's a little bit difficult. Okay, and then last but not least for this piece is we typically pay my mom $250 a month towards the loan that she gave us. So this had actually dropped from $24.99 down to $22.49, and then we made the decision to do an additional payment to her for this month, so additional $250, $500 total for the month, which then drops the debt down to under $2,000. So that was a nice milestone to hit, but also being able to give my mom a full $1,000 at the end of the month was nice too. And so we're making some progress. It's small, but we do need to celebrate those wins regardless of the size. Progress is progress is progress. So that's where that is. And on that note, we are going to check to see how did we do with what we expected to be doing for this month and what actually happened. And you can see this terrible glare on our our dining room table. Obviously, we already know that we did not meet the initial budget expectations because we did have a fair number of unexpected costs. Some of them were mitigated by income coming in that we weren't budgeting for or expecting, but not all of it. So initially, for the first half of December, we were going to be starting with $4,859.93, which is what we did. We had $500 in cash envelopes, and I have not done a cash stuffing. And I think I mentioned this in a previous video. I had before just gone to the ATM, so it's all 20s and maybe 50s, which I don't know that that's very interesting for cash stuffing if I were to do a video on it. So that's why I haven't been doing any of them on my channel. I have a little bit of a different situation for the second half of December just because of the denominations that I need. So I did actually go into the bank for the first time, and I don't know how many years. I was looking around for deposit and withdrawal slips, and apparently they don't do that anymore. So I felt a little bit like a fish out of water at that point. But yeah, so that was fun. Anyway, so I probably will start doing more in the cash envelope, cash stuffing, doing some of those videos in the future. So forgive me if they're a little awkward because they will be the first ones that I've ever filmed. Do you call it filming if you're using a phone? Probably not. Anyway, $840 mortgage. So our mortgage does get paid every 2 weeks. So this is essentially half of the mortgage payment. $598.25 for our credit cards. This is technically not minimum payments. Like I've said, I struggle with that. So it's each one we're paying just a little bit more than what the actual minimum is. And then $585.40 on our recurring monthly costs, which are things like car insurance, electric bill, gas bill, any subscriptions, those sorts of things. We were expecting at the end of this time period to have $2,336.28 left in our unallocated funds. This amount is higher than it normally would be because my partner did that experiment where he cashed in 40 hours of his PTO so that we could see how that would affect his paycheck if we need to do that in an emergency type of situation. $200 buffer. I like to keep a $200 buffer, which would leave us with $2,125 to go into savings. And once that moved into savings, that would leave us with $211.28 that rolls over for the 16th through the 31st time period. Okay. So where were we as of the 15th or end of this period? We did not have any cash envelopes left to deal with. We didn't have any mortgage payment to deal with for this time period. We do have another one for the second half of the month. All of our credit card payments had been made, and all of the recurring monthly costs for this time period had been taken care of. So that left us with $2,115.66 as our new unallocated amount. Now from there, we've got our $200 buffer. Which means we would have $1,900 to move into savings. And after that calculation is done, $215.66 rollover. Obviously, definitely a difference between what we were expecting to see and what the reality is, so about $225. And again, we are in kind of a weird limbo position where we do have the money available to absorb those kinds of overages, but of course we want to avoid those as much as possible, because that does mean there's less money for our banked savings for when my job goes away, because that bank savings is going to essentially replace my lost income for however long it takes me to find a job. So anything we can do to avoid not meeting our expected savings goals based on what the calculations tell us should happen at the beginning of the month, based on what our budget says should happen, is what we want to aim for. Now then, for the second half of December, we have our 215.66 rollover. Then we have my partner's typical pay, so not the inflated amount from the end of November, plus my pay, which this is inflated as well. It has a bonus in it. Typically it's about $1,900, not this amount. So the expectation is we will be starting out with $3,914.17 going into the second half of December. And we will do a video at the end of that time period to see whether we stick to the budget that's in place for that. I did not write down what that particular budget will look like. I suppose I could do a start of the period budget as video as well, if that's something that would be interesting to people. I always am unsure what folks might want to see with what we're doing with our budget. I will be putting out a video about the coin wrapping, so that will be coming out, and we have already pulled the money for stuffing our cash envelopes, so I will be doing my first cash stuffing video in the coming days. So that's where we are at the end of the first half of December. Did not quite meet the expectations that were there at the beginning of the month, but not terrible as far as where we landed. Obviously, if situations were different, then we would be in a probably much worse scenario, but we're lucky to be where we are right now. All right, if there are any questions, suggestions, or ideas, please drop those below. And of course, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe, if this is the kind of content that you're interested in seeing, if you're wanting to follow along with how we get along with things. Again, we're still in a little bit of a limbo situation because my job has not yet gone away. And at least right now, that's predicted to be the end of January. Things have changed constantly, so it could be before, could be after, so we'll see what the future brings. But in the meantime, I want to thank you all very much for taking some time out of your day to check in on us. I very much appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.